Welcome back to How to Craft Fair. This is the October 2023 channel member Q&A video. I'm going to answer the questions that matter the most to you because they've been submitted by you, the vendors. So let's go ahead and get started. So for today's video, I received a total of 6 questions from channel members. So the first question that we have is from Megan D, and it's if a craft fair has a set theme such as holidays and you don't typically market holiday themed items, what is the best way to stay relevant during the market and still pull a profit? So this is a great question, especially for this time of year as we approach, November and December as this video airs. But one thing that you can do is lean on your props, your displays, your accessories, and even consider the way that you're dressed. All right, so as we get closer to the holidays, there is a temptation out there for vendors to start designing items that have to do with the holiday. But you don't necessarily have to be this flexible with your inventory, okay? So you don't have to completely change what you're doing in order to accommodate a holiday. Think about your props and accessories that you're using around your booth. Maybe your lighting can be a different color to represent a holiday. Maybe your tablecloth or your table runner could be a certain color. Even your signage, like your pricing signage. If you print your pricing signage, buy paper that's already a certain color that reflects the holiday well. And if you use chalkboards or something like that where you write your signage, just use a certain color chalk or marker for your signage for that particular holiday. So there's a lot of different ways that you can incorporate a theme that's reflective of a holiday into your booth without having to change your inventory. All right, so the next question is, what is something that craft fair vendors often do not think of to bring or provide that is usually beneficial to have in any situation? So for this, I'd like to refer to my craft fair checklist. And I have an Etsy shop where I have a whole bunch of downloadable resources, and one of them is a craft fair checklist. And basically, it is a whole big list of items that you want to make sure that you're at least thinking of to bring to a craft fair. And I'll kind of do a quick rundown of this because I feel like this really reflects this question well. So the first section I have on the checklist is setup basics. Now this is kind of like just your inventory, items at all price points, the table covering, the table runner, your chair, your displays, your lighting, a mirror if you use a mirror at your booth, and any kind of like booth decor or props. All right, so these are all like your setup basics, kind of like just to get you started, all right? Then we move on to our marketing essentials, and that's your banner stands, or any way that you attach your banner, like say to your canopy, for example, your signage, your business cards, an email sign-up sheet, all of those essential marketing materials that you want to bring. Next thing that you want to consider is anything that you might need for your checkout. So cash and change, your apron or your cash box, a card reader, a QR code for payment if you want to give people kind of a head start on those touchless, cashless transactions, bags for when people purchase the items, and then some extra price tags are always nice to have on hand as well. Then we move to hardware and tools. So some of the ideas that I have on my checklist are a dolly or a loading cart, power strip, a power bank, which is becoming more and more important these days as we, rely on technology and electric items. Needle nose pliers are always good to have on hand. Scissors, a lint roller, pens and markers, tape and glue, paper clips, zip ties, and even some trash bags are nice to have on hand as well. So then you have kind of like your odds and ends that are easy to forget, and you can kind of kick yourself if you don't bring it. Some of these examples are your charging cables, snacks, water, your seller's permit if you are in a state or town or county or whatever that requires a seller's permit or any kind of paperwork that you're going to need to legally be a vendor at the event. Hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, these are always kind of nice to have on hand, especially the hand sanitizer, you guys, if you have items where people handle them quite often. Like for example, people that sell like candles, people are going to pick them up to smell the scents, and they might not buy it. So people are going to be constantly just touching your items over and over. So hand sanitizer is always good. The disinfectant wipes are always great. Tissue, pain medicine. You're going to be standing all day, so you might want this by the time you get towards the end of your day. First aid kit is always good, just in case if you accidentally cut yourself or whatever, hurt yourself. A notebook for taking notes throughout the day, and definitely bring some comfortable shoes. All right, and now for some accessories. Most of these are for the outdoor vendors, but still take it into consideration. So I have things like sunglasses, sunscreen, a hat, preferably something with like a sun hat, or maybe like even like a baseball hat, like something that's gonna relatively keep you in the shade if you're out on a hot day. And consider wearing your items if possible. So if you make items that can be worn, whether that's something that's fashion or just screen print, jewelry vendors, people that make hats, scarves, anything that can be worn, you should be like showcasing it on yourself at the show as well. So keep this in mind as you start to prepare for your show. But this is pretty much the gist of the craft fair checklist. I have a link to it below in the video description in case if you're interested. It's a great item to have. I think I have it priced for like $1.19 on Etsy. So it's, not a lot of investment on your part, but it's something that's nice to have on hand so that you don't forget anything that's essential to your setup. Okay, and now the third question is, if you find yourself at a vendor event that has a lot of foot traffic, there is always an opportunity of theft of small items. Other than constantly watching customers, which can be off-putting, how can you ensure your products are secure and not in jeopardy of being stolen? Okay, so the first thing that you can do is to put your small items close to where you'll be as the vendor, and then start to have your larger items go further and further away from where you'll be. So you have to think about how you're going to have your booth laid out in order to pull this off. But think about first where you're going to be standing as a vendor most of the time. Now consider having your smallest items close to you. The reason why you want to do this is because smaller items are the easiest to steal, okay? So if you have like a large, like 2 foot by 3 foot painting, that's going to be pretty hard for somebody to to steal and walk away from your booth. All right. So a lot of times when they're shoplifting at a booth, it's like, these smaller items. So consider placing them closest to you to help deter people from taking them because of the proximity of how close they'll have to be to you in order to pull it off. Now, one obvious thing that you can do to cut down on shoplifting is to try to bring a helper, whether it's a spouse or a friend or maybe a parent or something like that. Having a second set of eyes at your booth is very, very effective in cutting down shoplifting. It's very rare that shoplifting occurs at a booth when there's more than one person at it, okay? So this is definitely one thing that you can do to cut down on that loss prevention and that loss of profit at your booth. I know it's tough to try to get a helper sometimes, but aside from the whole benefit of cutting down on the shoplifting, it is mighty nice to have a helper at your booth for things like, the initial load in and the load out at the end of the day. It is really nice to have a second set of hands, a second set of eyes at your booth to help. All right, now another method that you can try is to be interactive and observant with the shoppers. So a lot of times when you walk through a craft fair, you're going to see basically two different types of vendors. There's the vendors who are usually standing, or if they're not standing, they're at least, present, and they're not on their phones, and they're like engaging with the shoppers, and they're looking at them and greeting them, saying hello, making eye contact, things like that. Then you see the vendors who are, maybe they have their heads down and they're like crafting, they're working on their crafts, or you even see vendors that are just sitting on their phones, or they're just reading a book. These all are not good ideas because, first of all, just from a sales standpoint, to be honest, it's not effective. You're not going to make a good impression on the shoppers, and your disinterest is going to become their disinterest. I guarantee it. So, just help yourself basically. Be engaging with the shoppers, and in doing this it is going to cut down on the shoplifting, because if somebody is walking towards your booth with bad intentions and you're making eye contact with them and you're engaging with them, they're going to get probably some cold feet. And who knows, maybe they'll still try to pull it off, but it's probably going to deter a lot of people from shoplifting at your booth because they know that you are connected to them. Okay. So use this for multiple reasons. Okay. So use this method to cut down on the shoplifting, but use it to your benefit to get better sales at your booth as well. All right, now kind of going hand in hand with that is to maximize your visibility. And this basically works two ways. Now, if you're a shopper approaching a booth, a lot of times the shoppers want to see the vendor. Okay, so that's why I always recommend people to stand if possible. And if they can't stand, get a taller chair. Some people will call it like a director's chair where it sits up kind of high. And at least that makes you a little bit more present to the shoppers. But by maximizing the visibility, shoppers enjoy that. They really like that. And again, if a shopper's coming with bad intentions, that's going to give them cold feet. On your end of the deal, maximize your visibility looking outwards. Okay, so don't have a bunch of displays that are going to completely give you a whole bunch of blind spots at your booth. That can bring on a lot of issues, one of them being shoplifting. So try to make sure that from where you're standing at your booth, that you can look from, left to right and scan the entire booth with pretty much no blind spots. And that's going to help to prevent some of the shoplifting that might occur at your booth. All right, so now another conversation that we should probably have is the apron versus the cash box conversation. And some people are very, very rigid about which one to choose over the other. I think that there's like some benefits to both. I personally prefer the apron because everything that's on you, like your cash and your change and maybe your phone for taking cards, like your Square reader, all that stuff is coming with you. Okay, so that's staying on you, all that very valuable material. A cash box, maybe it locks, so that's great, but you kind of have to keep an eye on it. So say a customer was asking you about an item on like the other side of your booth and you kind of like drifted over to help that customer. Well, now you're kind of disconnected from that cash box, and that can be a little bit of a dicey situation. So if you use a cash box, what I would recommend is to have it at least tucked away where it's not visible to shoppers at all. This can be underneath a table, or maybe if you use wooden crates at your booth, maybe align one where like the hollowed out part of the crate is actually facing inwards towards you. And that way you have kind of like a guarded area where the cash box can't really be seen. So just think about where you're putting your cash box and be strategic about it. And just be sure that you're not opening up yourself to be vulnerable to have that entire thing swiped, or for somebody just to take a fistful out of it. All right, so another method that you can do to at least identify shoplifting is to stay vigilant and track your inventory all throughout the day. I'd recommend doing this at least once an hour. And what you can do is just walk around your booth and take a look at everything. Maybe some things were moved and picked up and put down in the wrong spot, and you can kind of pick up and tidy up the booth as you do this. But then also look for things that aren't there that didn't sell. Okay, so that's a way to at least identify shoplifting at the booth. Now, it's not really going to do a whole lot to prevent shoplifting, but the thing is at least if you identify it, you can let the event organizer know, and maybe the event organizer can start to spread the word throughout the show for people to keep their guard up and maybe identify the person and catch them in the act. Okay, so While it might not really prevent shoplifting at your booth, it is still important to the success of the event, okay? And you want to look out for your fellow vendors. You always want to do that. And it's going to get you in the good graces of your fellow vendors and also the organizer themselves. So just be sure that you're staying on top of this and scan your booth every now and then. Again, multi-purpose, right? So you're kind of trying to identify any shoplifting that might have happened, but then you're also keeping your booth very nice and presentable all throughout the day. All right, now this last tip here for preventing the shoplifting is kind of a last resort. It's a little bit of a borderline extreme measure that you can take. But if you do experience heavy amounts of shoplifting at your booth, one thing that you can do is secure your most valuable items. So let's just say, for example, just to make it easy, you make jewelry, okay? And one of the things that you make is rings. Well, one thing that you can do is maybe have like a glass case or something that locks and is secured down at your booth where people can look at the items, whatever they might be, and that way, they can see everything that's for sale, but it can't just easily be swiped. Okay. So this again is kind of like a last resort for really valuable items that you just simply cannot afford to have shoplifted at your booth. All right, Megan, thank you so much for your fantastic questions. Now, the next three questions are from my channel member, Eliana M. And her first question is it safe to leave my booth set up overnight at indoor events? This is a fantastic question. A lot of outdoor vendors who start to transition to indoor events, this is one of their most common, concerns heading into an indoor show, because a lot of times these indoor shows are multiple day events. All right. So let's say you get like Thursday and Friday to set up your booth, and then the show is going to be Saturday and Sunday. Well, it's a lot of work to completely deassemble your booth at the end of a day, only for you to come back in and try to set everything up in the morning. So a lot of indoor vendors do keep their booths set up overnight. And what's most common you'll see is that vendors will get like a dark bed sheet or some kind of a sheet to lay over all their tables and all their displays and things like that. If you have like some indoor events actually allow you to still use a canopy indoors if it's like a big enough footprint. And what I'll see vendors do there is they'll actually put the side panels on their canopy, and then maybe on the front side, then they'll put like a sheet to basically entirely close it in. And then when they come in the morning, all they have to do is take like that, fourth panel or that sheet off, and they're good to go. So it is a massive time saver, but you have to use, I don't want to say common sense, okay? Because again, if this is like your first time doing an indoor event, it's just brand new to you, okay? So some things that you want to look for that are going to make you more comfortable with it is ask other vendors, like do other vendors who have been at this event for say a couple of years, do they keep their setup intact? Has there been any kind of issues that they've heard of? So ask your fellow vendors, and I'm sure that they'll help you out. Another thing that you can do too is kind of feel out the organizer. For instance, just verify with them that yes, indeed, the building is going to be locked and secured overnight and things like that, and just kind of like those basic security elements that you want to know. So great question. And I know I didn't really give like a super concrete answer of yes, it is safe. No, it isn't safe. You can't guarantee that something bad is not going to happen. Okay. I mean, you just never know. But personally, I've never heard of, a hall, getting broken into or anything like that. But again, it is a decision that, one that you have to make, and you're pretty much just weighing effort against risk. And it is low risk against high effort that it would take to completely tear everything down only to set it up the next morning. Okay, now the next question is, what do people expect of indoor events? Is it less crafty and more commercial? So in the word people, I don't know if that exactly means like vendors, what do vendors expect of indoor events if you haven't done indoor events before, or if that means like the shopper mindset of coming to an indoor craft fair. So I'll kind of just answer in general terms here. Indoor events are probably more likely to have DS or direct sale. And if you aren't familiar with direct sale, that's like your mass produced items and companies. So you have like Sensi, Tastefully Simple, Paparazzi, all these like companies. Okay. So those are direct sale DS companies. And like I said, an indoor event is probably more likely to have these types of vendors as opposed to an outdoor event. Why that is, I'm not exactly sure, but anyways, that is kind of the case. Now, it's definitely 100% okay to ask the organizer if the event will be just crafts or if it's going to be a mix of direct sale and crafts. Definitely okay to ask the organizer that, all right? Now, a good craft fair organizer is going to make this information clear ahead of time, either on the vendor application or somewhere online. Maybe they have like a website like for their events, like a .com website, or maybe it's just like Facebook event pages. But regardless, a good organizer should kind of have this published ahead of time. Let's say, for example, the event is going to be 90% handmade and then 10% direct sales, okay? Or it's going to be all crafts and no direct sales. Either way, if you don't have that answer put in front of you by the organizer, definitely feel free to ask them because it is 100% okay to ask the organizer about this. All right, so for Eliana's third question here, it's what should I do when I'm put in an unfavorable position next to a competing vendor, for example? What are the best ways of dealing with that? So, very good question. It's unfortunate, and nobody really wants to see this happen, of course, but mistakes do happen. So, talk to the organizer as soon as you can. And if a mistake like this is caught early enough, there's a chance that a last minute booth assignment could actually fix the issue. So say, for example, one of you two are willing to move to an alternate location, that could, alleviate the problem right there. If it's not possible, if you kind of catch this too late, maybe you kind of both got there like on the later side in the setup process, and it's basically just like there's no time, you got to set up, and we're both setting up. Just do the best that you can as two vendors next to each other. Okay. Do your best to use it as an opportunity to learn what works for them as a fellow vendor, because I mean that fellow vendor is obviously in your genre or niche of arts and crafts. So it is an opportunity to kind of, look at their setup and look at the way that they engage with shoppers. And, I'm sure that they'll be doing the same with you, and that's okay. And honestly, I think that you should actually treat it as an opportunity to, consider establishing a friendship or some kind of professional relationship with them as a peer in your field of arts and crafts. Remember that when you go to craft fairs, you want to build bridges. You don't want to burn the bridges down. Okay. So treat it as an opportunity, do the best that you can with it. And you never know. Sometimes this actually happens with vendors where they get placed to a quote unquote competitor vendor and it actually works out. Some people actually see it as, from the shopper's point of view. Some people see this as an actual benefit. They'll be like, cool, I came here for candles and there's two candle vendors right next to each other and I was able to shop from both. This actually legitimately happens sometimes. So try not to let it spoil your entire day, because your feelings and your attitude is going to project outward. So if you treat it as an opportunity, shoppers are going to vibe off that. They're going to be able to feel that you're excited. You're still excited to be at the event and you're still excited to showcase your works with the world. But if you're down in the dumps, that vibe is going to rub off on the shoppers as well. And they're probably just going to end up shopping next door with the other vendor if they're kind of looking at it as an opportunity. So don't let it get you down. Talk to the organizer. If something can be done about it, cool. But if it can't, just make the best of it. So this was the October 2023 channel member Q&A. Now I want to take a moment to, first of all, thank all the channel members out there. Really appreciate it. And to give you a little bit of insight on what comes with being a channel member. First of all, it's very, very inexpensive. It's less than $5 a month to become a channel member, and the perks are tremendous. You get custom emojis, badges. You get to submit questions to the channel member Q&A video to have your exact questions answered in a video. You also have the opportunity to get a booth review, and there are so many more perks of being a channel member. So I hope that you consider it. It's kind of like a bonus subscription where you get a lot more of a personal touch. Channel members reach out to me literally on, Facebook Messenger and stuff, and I'm there for their questions. So give it some consideration. I hope you check it out. If you are interested, hit the join button below and it'll show you like the different tiers and structures and benefits that come with those tiers. So thank you all so much for watching this video, and I look forward to all the questions for next month. Have a great day.